Welcome to Everything Weapons with David Cooper and Dalen Savage on 1510 WLAC. From buying a gun, ammo, and gun safety, David and Dalen can point you in the right direction by calling 615-737-WLAC or 1-800-688-WLAC. Now, here they are, the experts behind Everything Weapons. Everything Weapons. David Cooper and Dalen Savage.
Welcome to the Everything Weapons Hour this Sunday morning. We appreciate you guys tuning in. Today we have a very, very special guest, but before we get into that, my name is David Cooper and my co-host,
Dalen Savage.
We really appreciate you guys coming in and listening to us this morning. If you want to give us a call to talk to our very special guest, we have Aimpoint on, Keith Weaver from Aimpoint, 615-737-WLAC. or 1-800-688-WLAC, and that tunes into 9522 if you don't want to look on your phone and do the WLAC. I always hated that, so I always like knowing it's 9522. Good morning, Keith. How are you, sir?
Good, David. How are you doing?
We're doing fantastic. We really appreciate you guys coming on air today and allowing the Nashville gun buying community to really learn more about Aimpoint.
Oh, absolutely, and it's great to be on the show. Thanks a lot for having us.
No, our pleasure. You know, we like to remind our listeners out there that, you know, we don't pay the companies and the companies don't pay us. We look for the best companies out there in the marketplace, and we try and bring them to the general public and give them an opportunity to be able to, whether it's call in or just listen and hear what's going on with that company and why that company is something that we feel is important for the listener, the gun buyer, to have as a part of their arsenal or equipment that they use with their firearm. I'm a big believer in Aimpoint. I own I think I have 3 of them myself. Dalen, how about you?
4 or 5.
So, okay. So, you know, we're big believers in it. For whatever the reason is, that red dot, and we'll go through the difference between a red dot and a reticle, and, you know, competition out there has, yeah, exactly, holographic sights, and what that difference is. But for me, and before we get into all the different products that you guys have and which we would use for what purposes, I think the general overview is kind of why a red dot versus a holographic sight. And for me, what I found that I can come on target faster with a single red dot.
Yeah, absolutely. And real quick, just to hit on what you mentioned there, as far as it, you know, being a good product and bringing that out to everybody. You know, most of our biggest proponents, you know, we don't send them free sights, anything like that. You know, personally, you know, I would always use, you know, Aimpoint products regardless, you know, my employment with the company. It's just a great product. It works very well. And that's why, you know, a lot of people out there, just like you guys, you know, it's not one site, you know, they'll end up kind of owning 2, 3, 4, 5 as they start putting them on, you know, various different firearms that they own because they do work so well. So the product really does, you know, speak for itself and kind of sell itself in that regard. But getting into the technical aspect of it, like you said, you know, what is a red dot? Why use a red dot sight? What does it do? Well, what it really boils down to at the end of the day is it makes the aiming process, really the shooting process, fast, easy, and accurate. And that's it. So you basically just put the red dot where you want the round to go, and wherever the red dot is where your point of impact is going to be, where that sight is zeroed in at.
So give me an idea, not to interrupt you, but how many yards is a red dot good for, and are different red dots good for different distances?
Well, there is no magic number. You know, that's obviously one of the common questions that we get is, you know, well, how far can I shoot with this? And what that really boils down to is, you know, what are your parameters for accuracy? You know, what's a realistic, reasonable parameter for accuracy? So, you know, for example, if I'm shooting you know, bench rest out at 1,000 yards, and my objective is to, you know, shoot the smallest, tiniest group possible, you know, then obviously you're going to be looking towards a magnified optic. But non-magnified optics, such as Aimpoint red dot sights, you know, they're not limited to, you know, 50 yards or something like that. You can shoot out to, you know, hundreds of yards, just like you can do with iron sights. In fact, the red dot's going to give you a little bit more accuracy over iron sights. It's just an easier system to work with. But you know, if you're, let's say, you know, hunting, you know, I'd say the average you know, shot out there can easily hit vitals on an animal at 100 yards. a more experienced shooter, who practices a little bit more and, has a good stance and put some decent groups up, they can hunt out to 200 yards. So while red dot sights, because they're non-magnified and because of the way that they work, because they do excel and they're very well suited for close, fast stuff, you can still shoot, further out with a red dot sight. It's not limiting. But again, it just depends on what type of shooting you're doing and what your parameters for accuracy are.
So one of the things I've noticed is that at least your red dot, and I'm not sure about other companies' red dots, is that the battery life on your product is outrageous.
Oh, it's phenomenal.
What's it, 40 to 80,000 hours or something like that, depending on which product you're using?
Yeah, it varies depending on the particular model, but what we're talking about here is we're talking about a runtime that's measured in years, not hours or days. And, just for everybody to know, that's constantly on. So that's running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They don't turn themselves, the site does not turn itself off. And that's also not on setting 1. That's going to be on a usable daytime setting.
So like a mid-level setting?
Correct.
Okay. Because one of the things I saw that really amazed me was my first SHOT Show. It was 8 years for the Comp 3 left on mid-level all the time.
The Comp M4, yep.
Yeah, Comp M4, that's right, sorry. And then I went back this year, and the same one is 11 years. And I'm sitting there going, wait a minute. The holographic sights that we sell is like the
650 hours.
Yeah, I mean, so why do I want to spend, $550 for 600 hours or 650 hours when I can spend the same money for 11 years?
Exactly, and that's and essentially what we're talking about here is a Comp M4 running 80,000 hours on an alkaline battery, or basically 100,000 hours, which is close to 11 years on a lithium. And it kind of gets down to the what makes an Aimpoint sight an Aimpoint sight. Why do a lot of people go with this technology? It makes the aiming process fast and easy and accurate. So that's there, and that's all great, but it does take some technology to make that happen. We do have electronics in the sight. We do have glass in the sight. We do have some mechanical parts. So yeah, if something made you a lot more accurate and fast and made shooting easy, that's great. But if it's not reliable, if you can't count on it absolutely 100% all the time, then what good is it? Particularly for a professional type of end user or somebody who just demands the best out of their equipment and wants the best stuff out there. They need to really count on it. And battery life is a form of reliability. If you have a site that it does everything else great, but then it doesn't run very long, and the batteries are constantly dead, you have to swap the batteries out or it's turning itself off, something like that, it's not the most reliable thing in the world. And that's why with an Aimpoint site, whether it's just for recreation or whether you're hunting and you've been freezing your tuchus off in a tree stand for 4 hours and you finally get the animal that you were looking for, whether you're law enforcement, deploying out to a call, obviously going to be a high stress scenario, and of course, use your imagination for an unlimited amount of scenarios for military end users. They can just grab the gun and the sight's on. You just shoulder it and you're ready to go. There's no playing around with buttons. There's no changing the batteries out or anything like that. And that's something that is unique to Aimpoint brand red dot sights. It is the technology that we have developed over the last 40 years that gives the end user that type of incredible battery life.
One of the things that I always talk about with my customers is I call it one and done, and it's total cost of ownership, not the purchase price of the product. Because one of the things that I've found is how do we do what we do and how much is it going to cost us to do that? Now, we're heading into commercial here, Keith, so when we get back from our commercial, I want to get into kind of, that total cost versus purchase price and how we look at the total versus, a competitor that's $200 versus your product at, say, $450. And when we get back, we'll continue with Aimpoint and Keith Weaver. Stay with us. We are back with Keith Weaver and Aimpoint. So, Keith, one of the things I wanted to kind of get into is that overall cost versus price. And a lot of people come in and they're sitting there and saying, well, I don't want to spend, $424.99 for a patrol rifle optic. I want to spend $200. And, the comments that I come back with is, I'd like you to buy this product once, not multiple times during your shooting career. So the longevity and the quality of the Aimpoint product is obviously what demands that price, durability of it, the battery life, that stuff. But the cheaper products are selling for half the money, and the battery life is down to that 400 and 600 hour range. So you're spending all this extra money on batteries. But the other thing that's winding up costing customers a lot of money is after a year, it doesn't hold zero anymore. And so what have you guys found in that as well? I don't know if you've done any research of, you can go through, 3 other products and one Aimpoint for the same length of time. Have you done anything like that?
Well, not as a company, but just as somebody that's been in the retail side of things, and you guys obviously have experience with this too. And heck, all your shooters out there, that have probably tried out some of these different sites and some of these cheaper red dot sites, you have a relatively high failure rate. With a lot of them, it's kind of just a matter of when you're going to have a problem with it. And best case scenario, it just comes down to how much is your time worth? How much is your frustration worth when you're sitting there at the bench 45 minutes later still trying to get this thing zeroed in, or you finally got it zeroed in and now it's not holding zero again, or the battery's dead again, and it's just kind of these constant issues. The Pro in particular, as you mentioned, a very, very popular site. Yes, it's in the $400 price point range, so the customer does have to spend a little bit more upfront with the site, but what they're getting for that price is phenomenal. I mean, the value is absolutely phenomenal. It's essentially a combat proven site. The Pro's very similar to the first generation Army M68 CCS. You're getting a professional piece of equipment. These are manufactured in Sweden, and you're getting a level of reliability and performance out of the site. Like you said, it's going to work the first time and it's going to last you a lifetime. So what I tell people is, with this product, which either you buy it, take it out of the box, put the battery in it, you mount it on the rail, which with the Pro requires no tools. You just click the QRP2 knob, and it's on the rail. Zero it in, and that's literally it. You're done. So once, maybe once a year, maybe once every 2 years, 3 years, you're going to change battery out. But other than that, literally you just put this thing on a gun, and that's it. And it kind of spoils you. If you've used different products, particularly some cheaper red dot sites like you're talking about, and you just have all these kind of issues, that happen with the site. The Aimpoint site, you don't really realize how reliable it is until you kind of sit there and scratch your head and go, man, that thing, it's been sitting there for 5 years. It's never lost zero. I've never had to re-zero it. It's never broken. I've never turned it off. And I probably haven't even changed the battery out on most of them.
What about something like moving from gun to gun? Do we need to re-zero it on each gun that we move it to if it's still a pick rail, 5.56 going from Daniel to Daniel or Daniel to LWRC or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, just like any other sight or scope, obviously you have to zero it in, for the particular firearm that it's being used on. However, what I've found, having mounted a lot of different optics and zeroing in a lot of different optics, because of the quality with the Aimpoint sight, the zeroing process is incredibly fast and incredibly easy. So normally you'll be able to get it zeroed in with just a couple of rounds. You have half-minute adjustments, positive click adjustments. So the zeroing process is going to be very predictable, very easy. And, obviously, if possible at all, you want to, of course, do a bore sight just like with anything else, to get yourself on paper. But once you get yourself, pretty close to the target on the bullseye, you just simply do your math, put the amount of clicks in, and you're going to be right there. So it's a very easy process getting you zeroed in.
Now, Keith, one thing I wanted to ask you, do you guys set these from the factory at all? Because every single Aimpoint product I've ever owned, I've literally mounted it to the top of the rifle and been pretty close to where I needed to be.
Yeah, now what you're talking about is, let's say you can't bore sight, right, for whatever reason, or you don't have time. This is kind of a phenomenon that's happened that I've noticed and a lot of other people have noticed too. When you combine high-quality parts from the gun to the rail, to the mount of the sight, to the sight, and everything else, everything's pointing in the same direction. Whereas with, a cheaper product where the rail's not going to be quite in alignment with the barrel, let's say, or the mount's going to be kind of out of whack or something like that, if you have a high-quality AR-15 rifle, you get your new Aimpoint sight. They are factory-centered, as you just mentioned. So every single sight built by hand in Malmö, Sweden, and those are each individually centered in the tube. So basically, when you get all that stuff and you put it all together, because it's high quality, all the tolerances are really tight on everything, everything's going to be pointing in the same direction. So 9 times out of 10, what I've noticed is if, again, you're using a decent quality AR-15 rifle, if you get a new Aimpoint sight and you go to zero to end, you're already going to be pretty close to where you need to be, which, again, just makes everything that much easier, and that much more convenient, because we all love zeroing stuff in.
Now, this year you launched a new product, a step below the patrol rifle optic. Let's talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, and I wouldn't really call it a step below. It's a different option. And what you're referring to is called the ACO, or the Aimpoint carbine optic. And before the ACO, the Pro, the patrol rifle optic, was our tactical sight that's going to be at a price point. So essentially, a lot of the micros comp M4s can go up into the $600, $700, $800 price range. So with the patrol rifle optic, you can get a real deal Aimpoint sight, in the $400 price range, and then there you go. But that was pretty much it. And the Pro, being designed with law enforcement in mind, has lots of additional features that a lot of shooters really don't want or don't need, such as night vision compatibility, modular quick detachment, and all that stuff. So what we wanted to offer was an AR-15 specific sight for just general use, and get the price down even lower. So the Aimpoint carbine optic comes out of the box, ready to mount onto your AR-15. So the mount's it's included, it's factory installed. It's a 1/2 co-witness or an absolute co-witness mount. Again, this is real deal Aimpoint, made in Sweden, awesome battery life, parallax free, which is a huge feature of our product that I haven't mentioned yet. Basically everything else it has, but it doesn't have, let's say, night vision compatibility, because a lot of people probably don't need or use that, and some people do, and obviously we have options for that. But for the people that don't need it, that costs money, obviously. So by giving everybody kind of just what they need, they get an awesome out-of-the-box AR-15 sight, which retails at $393. So we're now under $400 for a genuine made-in-Sweden Aimpoint red dot sight.
Now, the biggest difference between your sight as a red dot and a holographic sight, what's that customer going to see as a difference? And have you done any research on why the eye might attract faster to a red dot versus a reticle or a holographic?
Well, essentially what we're getting down to there is it is an apples to apples comparison to an extent. Obviously a lot of people out there are kind of looking at the big three. They're looking at the combat-oriented, compact design, magnified optics. Obviously the ACOG, the U.S. Marine Corps' RCO is a pretty prevalent one. Then you have the holographic sights, and then you have your Aimpoint red dot sights. So the magnified sight obviously is different. So it's a whole different animal. But when you compare the holographic sight to an Aimpoint reflex sight or a red dot sight, you have a lot of the same features, such as they're non-magnified, they're 1x. Both eyes open, parallax free for the higher quality ones, et cetera, et cetera. So they give you a lot of the same advantages there. But when you cut them in half and you look at how they're designed and how they're made, they couldn't be more different. And that's where Aimpoint really has the edge, because our stuff it's incredibly efficient, very simplistic, but works very well. The Swedes are really incredible engineers, and we can give you all of those features in a very simple type of design, which is going to give you that type of reliability, durability, battery life, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas on a holographic site, one of the biggest differences is, we utilize an LED or a light-emitting diode to create our dot, which is the most efficient way to convert electrons into photons. So to get that electric energy in the battery to turn into light, the LED is the most efficient way to do it. And then obviously we have very, very advanced LED technology that gives us the battery life that we have. And a holographic site, to get that technology to work, which is essentially a miniaturized heads-up display, it utilizes a laser. And lasers just eat batteries, for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. There's just no way to get a laser not to, chew batteries up. Not to mention the amount of, digital controls that are in that. It's incredibly complex, and of course, with anything that's more complex, you can have more issues with it. So, at the end of the day, again, if you're looking for, super fast, easy, quick, parallax-free illuminated reticle, if you want the reliability, if you want the battery life, if you want the durability, then an Aimpoint reflex type of red dot sight is really the only way to go. And obviously, as you mentioned, the reticles are different. It's kind of a different view of downrange, and a lot of that is just really subjective and personal preference. And what I tell people is, personally, I like the single red dot sight. It's the easiest, it's the fastest way. Obviously, I'm shooting a single bullet out of my firearm. I'm aiming at a single point on the target. So obviously, the red dot sight is a very good, or the red dot, I should say, the reticle is a very good translation of that, and it works very well. In some of the other holographic sites, let's say if you have a 65 MOA ring, something like that, and somebody says, "Oh, well, I think that's faster." For me, it just kind of clutters everything up. And what I feel is,
Keith, we're heading into a commercial right now. When we get back, we'll finish talking about the differences in those types of reticles. Stay with us, everybody. Keith, now that we're back from commercial, I also want to, don't forget, if there's anybody out there that wants to talk to Keith, please give us a call at 615-737-WLAC or 615-737-9522. One of the things I wanted to say is that, not everybody is a active shooter or very experienced shooter. Let's dial it back a minute. Dalen's got some great questions to kind of help the more entry-level shooter, beginner shooter.
Yeah, Keith, one thing you hit on a few times, I think it's a great aspect to the Aimpoint, the entire Aimpoint line really, is the concept of it being parallax-free. Can you explain to our listeners what exactly that is and how they can benefit from that?
Absolutely. So essentially, whenever you have something in alignment, you're looking at something, pointing something, you can have this thing called parallax, which basically makes it look like it's pointing somewhere that it's not. And the easiest way to explain that is, if you're driving the car and your speedometer needle's on 55 miles an hour, if you ask the passenger to look at the speedometer, where's the needle? To him, it looks like it's on 50. That's parallax. So essentially with iron sights or a scope or red dot sights, if you're not in perfect alignment every time, then there's parallax affecting it, and where it tells you it's pointing is not where the firearm's actually pointing. So it can hurt your accuracy is what it comes down to. So with an Aimpoint red dot sight, we have essentially put a design that compensates and eliminates that parallax infraction. So when you're shooting and you're the shooter, you bring your firearm up onto the target, you have your red dot in your Aimpoint sight that you're looking at. As you move your head around, you're going to notice that dot floats around and moves around in the lens. With an Aimpoint red dot sight, that's not a problem because it's actually still pointing where that red dot is. And that's just one of those features that makes it faster as well as more accurate as well as easier to use.
And another thing, here's another question. And David and I actually experienced this ourselves when we first got the T1 in. It's the concept of the front glass being tilted. We had a customer brought one back, said, this thing's broken. Look at the front glass, it's tilted. We looked at it, not knowing. I mean, luckily I called you guys and found out quickly. But can you explain why you guys do that?
Absolutely, and that's again one of the kind of FAQs that we get when people get their new Aimpoint sight. They're checking it out. They notice, that's odd. The front lens is tilted. And the reason that it's like that is it's just how the technology works. Essentially, as I mentioned earlier, we have an LED emitter, so it's shooting the beam of light out actually forward out of the front of the sight. That's the direction that it's pointing in. And it hits the front lens, and it's going to reflect off of the front lens. So the red dot that you're seeing isn't actually there. It's just a reflection of the LED. So essentially, because the LED is on the inside wall, if you will, of the sight, it's pointing up at the front lens at an angle. So the front lens has to be at the particular angle to reflect the light straight back to the center of the tube, which means the lens has to be canted. So even though an Aimpoint sight, it kind of looks like a scope in a lot of ways with a round, metal body with lenses on the either end of it, but it works very differently, and the lens does not need to be straight in the front.
One of the things that I noticed is as I was doing my training on Aimpoint, and we have different websites and processes we go through in our training, I saw some pretty unique videos showing the depths, let's say, that and the Aimpoint can be, or I should say tolerances that the Aimpoint will withstand. So could you kind of go through some of that stuff? I've seen, short videos of, a diver picking it up off the bottom of the ocean, or I think one's dumping it out of a helicopter or picking it up out of the desert sand. Go through some of that stuff with us. Sure,
yeah. The sights are, they're super tough. They're incredibly durable. That's a huge part of our reputation, particularly with the U.S. Army contracts. And we've delivered over 1 million units to the U.S. Army under contract. Obviously, you're going to have a very durable product for that to happen. And essentially, at the end of the day, what it comes down to is you're not going to hurt this thing. So all Aimpoint sights are submersible, not water resistant, but you can actually dive with them. That's one reason that we have end users in the Navy that use our product because they can dive with these things.
I know I dive with my M4 all the time. So
well, that's what I tell people. I say, hey, this is submersible to 150 feet underwater. It's like, hey, if I'm 150 feet underwater, we have other issues.
Yeah, I'm not pulling out my Aimpoint with.
But the bottom line is, realistic application. If you're in a downpour situation, you drop it in a puddle, whatever. It's not going to damage the site. They're impervious to moisture, temperature range. You can freeze them, you can bake them. As far as shock resistance, you can. We take the M4 as a demonstration all the time, and we'll engage some steel and take it off of the gun, and we'll throw it up and down the range, kick it around, drop it on concrete, remount it, and bang, 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 ding, 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 just to show that, it didn't hurt the site and it didn't lose zero.
So if I didn't have a baseball one day, I could grab my Aimpoint and we could play with that?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's actually one of the intro videos that we did. We actually had an MLB player take some swings at an M40, eventually cracked the bat, but the site actually was not broken. So
broke the bat.
Super tough. Yeah, they're super tough. And you can, again, whether it's home defense, whether it's competition, whether it's military, law enforcement, hunting, whatever it is, pretty much anything that you throw at these things, it's not going to hurt them.
Yeah, I think everybody should get on YouTube and check out the Daniel Defense video that they did with Larry Vickers with the Aimpoint T1, where they actually blow it up, and it still worked. It's the same rifle we saw at SHOT Show.
The same one that they had?
The same one
really?
they have on display.
Wow.
The sight still worked. Lens was cracked. He still made hits. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, that's a great video. And, Daniel Defense obviously makes great stuff, and, they're big proponents of Aimpoint products because it works well. And that video almost turned into an Aimpoint, commercial.
Yeah, it really did.
Showing off the rifle. But yeah, even after blowing the sight up with a binary compound and blowing the rear lens out, it still functions. And that's another interesting thing about Aimpoint sights. The LED is completely safe to the eye, so you can actually break the rear lens out and still use it because you're still seeing the reflection off of the front lens, and it's safe to the eye. Whereas with the holographic sights, if you break the lens, you now have a laser that's coming right back into your eye.
Yeah, I don't think I want a laser in my eye. I think that would really kind of hurt. I did get flashed with one time at a gun show from across the room, and I was like, it just, it set me off kind of. It was weird. So one of the things that I wanted to ask about was we've talked about your red dots a lot, but what about your magnifiers? At what point do I really need, if I'm going out past 200 yards, do I need your magnifier? What are some of the features and benefits of your magnifiers? We've only had a few of them in the shop, but they've sold pretty quick and well. Tell me about the Aimpoint magnifiers.
Sure. So the concept of the magnifier essentially, it takes your primary sight here, which is a 1x or non-magnified optic, and it adds magnification to it. So it essentially, turns it into a scope. So you get increased, functionality out of the sight. And the original concept of the magnifier actually has been around for quite some time. I think we had one back in the 80s. But we made our current 3X magnifier specifically for the U.S. Army. So they had a ton of top M2s and some M4s, and they wanted to essentially add some functionality so you can squeeze more accuracy out of this, if you will. So we essentially kind of redesigned the 3X magnifier in a form that was mil spec. So the 3X magnifier is it's a small binocular. You can hold it in the palm of your hand, but it's incredibly tough, very high quality glass. And it essentially will use some type of mechanism. We have our mount called the twist mount, which allows the magnifier to detach completely from the top of the rail and then be reinstalled very quickly with just one hand. We're also very popular as the aftermarket flip mount, which essentially will flip the 3X to the side, or Liberty Tactical makes one called a pivot mount, which is a very good mount that works in that function. So the magnifier stays on the gun. It basically just is introduced and then removed from your line of sight.
You mentioned glass on there, and I think that's something that people are really sensitive to. They see a lot of products that come in with quote-unquote Chinese glass, or they want to find out or ask questions, is it Japanese glass, is it American glass? Are you familiar with what kind of glass you guys use?
Yeah, I can't get into all the trade secrets, obviously, but what I can say is that
come on, Keith.
It is a very high-quality European glass.
Okay, that's good enough. I mean, that gives us an overall direction.
Yeah, we do not use, cheap Chinese source glass like some of the other 3X magnifiers out there. And one of the reasons for that is, again, we built this for the Army, and they needed something that was small, it was compact. And that means you're going to have a small objective lens in the front. And obviously with a small objective lens, you can't gather as much light. So you have to compensate for that and make up for that with very, very high-quality glass. So that's what we have in the 3X magnifier. The same magnifier that we designed for the Army, that's the one that's available in the commercial market. So again, we weren't, designing this to be a super low price point, piece of equipment. We were building something that is just as tough, just as durable as the Aimpoint sight itself, but is also lightweight, and it's going to give you that extra magnification for that higher degree of precision or that further shot.
And Keith, when we get back from commercial, we'll finish up the interview with the last 15 minutes of the show, and we really appreciate you coming on. We're going to keep you through the break because we've seen some really interesting things out there in the marketplace that we'd love to talk to you about. Welcome back to the Everything Weapons Hour. I think that's something that Dalen and I just kind of got remiss on. We got so involved in Aimpoint, we forgot to talk about everything weapons. So it's pretty funny that sometimes when we really enjoy the show, we kind of sometimes will forget to give out a call number. We'll forget to give out information on everything weapons. But, that's okay because it shows how truly involved we are with the product and how much we believe in what we're doing. Is it's less important about the store and about us, and it's all about what we can bring to the customer and giving them that vital information that we think will make a huge difference in their shooting career and their enjoyment of shooting. Because one of the things we always talk about with customers, we go back to that price versus cost, and it's like, how many times or how much time do you want to take driving from store to store to store? Mm-hmm. Do you want to be able to have that long-term relationship with a store that you currently don't have, so that when you go in, they're going to be honest with you. They're going to, tell you the truth on everything. If they don't have the answer, they're going to go out and get the answer for you. They'll do special orders. We have our computer set up in the store, so if you come in and we don't have a product, you can buy it online in our store right then and there, and we'll guide you through the process to make sure that you walk out with the product that you need, whether it's in hand or being mailed to you. Any gun that we don't have in the store, again, we can buy it right online, right on our website. The gun will be delivered to our store without a transfer fee, without a shipping cost, and we'll call you as soon as the gun comes in. I'm not familiar with another store that does that. Maybe they do, but I kind of like our style and our process of everything for the customer. We don't carry a lot of different guns because we don't feel that they have the quality of what we want to put in front of our customer, because when we give you something and we hand you something, we're saying we believe in that product. And that's why we wanted Aimpoint on today. And next week, we're having CZ on. And CZ also owns Dan Wesson. So when we have a company on air, it's because we truly believe in that company and that we think it should be a valuable part of your I don't know if you want to call it arsenal or collection, but what you own and how you spend your hard-earned money. Mm-hmm. So, Keith, going back to the optics and the magnifiers, is there anything new coming down the pipe for Aimpoint that you could talk about that maybe is soon to be released or anything like that? Just a kind of a wild hair question.
I can't get into any specifics on anything, but per usual, our R&D team in Sweden is currently working on a couple of new things. So definitely keep your eyes open. But there's nothing in the immediate future. As of right now, we have some pretty substantial new projects. You mentioned the ACO was released, but we also had the Micro T2, which is a substantial product, which was released recently, as well as the H variant of that, the Micro H2, which we announced and released at the NRA show in Nashville recently. So there is a lot of great new product out there right now today. But yes, I'm sure in the future we'll have some new stuff coming out as well.
So how do you feel about putting the patrol rifle optic on a 10.5 inch? Do you feel that belongs on a full 14.5 or 16, or do you feel comfortable with that on a 10?
No, it'll work great on a 10. I have several SBRs. I have some full-size 30 tubes like the Pro mounted on some of them, and I also have the Micro mounted on a lot of them, which is my personal preference. I think the Micro is a little bit more appropriate for an SBR, just because you're kind of going along with the theme of lighter weight, less bulk, easier to handle. So the Micro is really going to complement, the features of the SBR. However, we do have shooters out there that just simply prefer the more traditional, larger 30 mil tube of the Pro. We see guys run them on SBRs all the time, and they work great.
And for the people that own legally registered machine guns, they hold up perfect on machine guns. I'm going to guarantee and assume, right?
Absolutely, yeah, of course. And we, various end users, run these on a lot of different, fully automatic applications. And, a lot of people think Aimpoint, they immediately kind of think of putting it on an AR-15 or, the U.S. Army's M4. So they kind of think, okay, well, this is a 5.56 or 223 type of sight. And that's actually not the case. Aimpoint sights were originally designed for hunting. And they were used, and we still use them extensively for hunting. They're great hunting optics, and most of those are on much larger, heavier hitting calibers. Particularly, we put the Micros on dangerous game rifles, on double rifles, and those are some, very, very heavy rounds, some very hard-hitting rounds with lots of recoil. And absolutely, the Aimpoint sight will hold up to any type of recoil, including airgun recoil.
I could put it on a Barrett 50?
Absolutely.
Oh, I think I'm going to have to see if I can make a phone call and get out and try that.
You can definitely do that.
If you feel comfortable with giving out some of the kind of information, what's your kind of breakdown? How much are you selling into the consumer market, the law enforcement market, the military market? Where's your biggest market? Or maybe a better question is, how important is the consumer market to Aimpoint?
Well, it's very important, of course, and that's globally. We sell all over the world. We have lots of customers across the globe, and those are both commercial and military customers. So, everything's very important. Obviously, the relationship and the business that we have had with the U.S. Army is very important, very substantial. We take a lot of pride in that. But the U.S. market is a huge market. We obviously, have the U.S. consumer in the front of our mind. We design a lot of product, specifically for that individual. So whether it's a hunting optic, or whether it's going on their AR-15, or whether it's for competition use, absolutely, the commercial market's incredibly important.
Do you guys have a separate LE division? I was just thinking, Dalen's a former 11-year deputy sheriff. We would love, I don't know if you do, but if you have LE designated dealers, we'd love to do that.
Yeah, because we have products that do cover different types of shooting, or different types of end user requirements. We do kind of break stuff up a little bit, into kind of a government business type side, and we have people internally that have that background, and they focus on that specifically, because we do work currently with a variety of law enforcement as well as military end users. And then we have, obviously the dealer a lot of times, because we do not sell directly to the manufacturer. All of our sales go through our dealer network. So obviously the dealer is going to be a part of that. So we do have dealers that, kind of lean towards the government, business side, and they understand how that business works. And it's obviously very different, than how the commercial retail side works. And then we also have the retail side. But, one thing to keep in mind is we do have a lot of commercial dealers that also, they're servicing the general public, but a lot of their customers are law enforcement.
We'll have to talk more offline about that. Wanted to find out, one of the things I saw that was really interesting, we just picked up, 15 LWRCs the other day. And when I was at the NRA show, I was over at their booth for a minute, and they said, "Oh, have you ever?" And I said, "Well, I'm a dealer. I had a nice suit on. I didn't have an everything weapons shirt on." So I said, "Yeah, we just picked up like 15 rifles." And so let's talk about that deal right now that you have with LWRC.
Correct. So currently, we're running a promotion at NRA, and LWRC is running a promotion where if you purchase a select LWRC rifle, and you'd have to actually, I don't know the exact models off the top of my head here, so you'd have to find out which ones, but it is on the select models. You receive a free Aimpoint Micro T1 with the purchase of the rifle. Isn't
that like something like an $800 MSRP optic?
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be up there. The T1s currently retail at $783.
Wow.
So they're and it's a phenomenal optic. For those of you out there that aren't familiar with the micro, they do cost a little bit more, obviously, than the let's say like a Pro or an ACO. But you essentially get all of that full-size sight performance and functionality in a small, lightweight package. Weighs about 3.5 ounces. It's about 2 1/4 inches long, and for example, you have a 50,000-hour battery life, so you have a 5-year runtime.
And I think that's one of the things we forgot to talk about before. Every customer that comes in the store right now, we're showing them your optic with that LWRC and making that connection. But that battery life issue over and over and over again, people just don't understand. Like for me, and I talk about this a lot, is I've got a couple young kids. And so for in-home defense, I'm using a SBR 300 blackout with a suppressor, and I've got your optic on that gun. And the benefit that I always see is I don't have to worry about, is my battery going to work? Is that item going to be on for me? Do I have to have like a battery time check so I'm keeping track of that battery life on a regular basis? Or can I just put it completely out of my mind?
It's just there.
The product's going to work. And I think that's the single most important thing to me when I'm buying a red dot, especially for my use of in-home defense and anybody else that's using it for in-home defense. The number one thing that I'm concerned with is battery life, because is that product going to work when I need it to work?
Yeah. Bad guy may not give you an opportunity to turn your optic on.
Or change the battery.
Change the battery.
In my case, I always say, I can't yell, "Hey kids, put your hearing protection on." So it's one of those things that you want to always make sure that things go right. So Keith, I just really want to thank you for coming on air. I know it's a Sunday. It's not a typical workday for you. I really appreciate you and Aimpoint giving us the time to, have you in front of our listeners. If you guys ever want to come out and do an in-store, we'd love to have you guys there. We always advertise that stuff on the radio and make sure there's strong attendance. Again, it's important for us to get our customers to get to know the manufacturers and understand why the manufacturers make things the way they make them and why they make them. Next week is CZ. If you guys need to see us during the week, come in and see us in store. And Dalen, if you have any closing comments or things that you'd like to say.
No, I really appreciate you coming on, Keith, and helping our listeners get a better understanding of the quality of product that Aimpoint puts out.
Yeah, thanks for having us on. I really appreciate the opportunity to discuss our products with your listeners.
Yeah. So we've got about a minute left, and in that minute, it's really hard to get out some of the political things that I think are important to talk about. And we kind of do a little political thing every show, but organization is going to be the number one thing that will win the next election cycle. And it is not too early to start talking to your friends, to start talking to your family, to begin to get ahead of the issues and really understand what is out there and what are the possibilities, who the different people are that are running, get really deep into their backgrounds. Don't just listen to what they're saying, but what have they done, and pay attention mostly to what have they done. We've seen a lot of people get elected and they do the flip-flop where instantly they're one way, the next day after election they're another. Pay attention. Thank you very much for listening to Everything Weapons. We'll see you